My family kicked me out when I refused to join the family restaurant. They said, "You'll be homeless without us." 5 years later, they came to a Michelin-Starred opening, not realizing I was the owner. One cousin whispered, "Wait. That's him?" What happened next was: 5 years ago, my family disowned me because I refused to take over the family restaurant. They told me I'd be nothing without them. I left with $200 and a backpack. Last week, they unknowingly walked into a Michelin-Starred restaurant in Manhattan, not realizing I owned it. One cousin recognized me. My father stood up and asked, "You made this?" What happened after that? I still don't know how to feel about it, so. You're the owner? That's what my father asked me after 5 years of silence. No calls, no emails, no birthdays, no apologies. Just nothing. I stood there in my chef's whites, the kitchen behind me, candlelight flickering off the polished wood tables, while my mother clutched her wine glass like it might crack under the weight of her surprise. She looked older. So did my brothers. Even my loud Uncle Franco didn't say anything for a good 2 minutes. Just blinked at me like I was a ghost. But I guess I should rewind a bit, before the Michelin stars, before the prestige, before the hushed voice of my cousin saying, "Wait. That's him?" It started with me saying no, and in my family, that wasn't something you did. I grew up outside Chicago in a neighborhood where every other family was Italian American and every other kid I knew either worked in a family business or was guilt into it. Ours was a restaurant. Not some glamorous, downtown establishment with an open kitchen and minimalist plating. No. DiMartino's was old school, red sauce, loud voices, laminated menus, and greasy air vents. My dad, Claudio, was the type of man who thought hard work was the only work. My mom, Mirella, was the kind of woman who believed loyalty to family was more important than individual dreams. And then there were my brothers, Leo and Matteo, who followed orders without ever questioning the destination. They were good at it. They fit the mold. I didn't. Even as a kid, I wanted something different. I didn't know how to say it back then. I just knew that while Leo loved preparing veal and Matteo got a thrill from counting the night's cash, I loved flavors, colors, and experimenting. I used to make strange pasta combinations at home and hide them in Tupperware in the back of the fridge so my dad wouldn't throw them out for wasting good cheese. By the time I was 18, I knew I didn't want to live and die behind the line at DiMartino's. I had started following chefs online, watching videos from places like Lou Bernardine, 11 Madison Park, and Noma. I'd sketch out menus in the back of my math notebook. When I finally worked up the nerve to tell my parents I wanted to go to culinary school, real culinary school, in New York, it didn't go over well. My mom cried. My dad said, "So, you think you're better than your own family?" Leo laughed and said, "Let's see how long that dream lasts when your rent's due." Matteo just shook his head, disappointed. Like I was letting the team down. The next morning, they gave me an ultimatum: stay, take over the family restaurant, or leave and never expect a dime from them again. I left. With $238 in my checking account, a duffel bag full of kitchen tools, and no idea what was waiting for me on the other side of that decision. New York was cruel and cold and everything they warned me about it would be. But it was also beautiful. I couch hopped at first. A friend from culinary forums let me sleep on his floor in Queens, then I moved to a tiny basement room in Crown Heights that had a view of someone else's trash cans. I worked every job I could find, peeling potatoes in a greasy diner, washing dishes at a falafel place, delivering groceries on a busted bike with only one brake. And in between it all, I studied. I was saved. I scraped together enough to enroll at the Culinary Institute of America. The day I got my acceptance letter, I sat on a bench in Union Square and cried. Not because I was proud, but because I was scared. Scared that I had no backup plan. Maybe my dad was right. But once I stepped into the classrooms at CIA, something clicked. I wasn't the weird one anymore. I wasn't trying to convince anyone that gastronomy was more than sauce and meatballs. I was surrounded by people who obsessed over temperature, who argued about the mouthfeel of different oils, who understood that cooking wasn't just feeding, it was art. That's also where I met Celine. Pastry was her thing. She could make gelato so smooth it felt like silk in your mouth. We were complete opposites in a lot of ways. She was methodical and quiet, I was loud and impulsive, but somehow we balanced each other. We started working on pop-up dinners together, and eventually, after we graduated, we decided to start our own place. It took years. We cooked out of shared kitchens. We served secret supper clubs in Brooklyn lofts. We got stiffed by investors, lost a deposit on a location in Soho, and once had to cancel an entire month of tastings because I sliced the tip of my finger off during prep. But we didn't stop. Eventually, we found the right space, a little spot in the West Village. Nothing fancy. Just a brick building with a plain black door and a ridiculous rent. We poured everything we had into it. Named it our door, Passion, in Italian, because that's all we really had. And somehow, people came. Critics wrote about us. Influencers posted us. The reservations list grew. Then one day, someone whispered the words Michelin and I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. We got the star. And then another. I hadn't spoken to anyone in my family for 5 years. I didn't even know if they were still in Chicago. I had no idea if DiMartino's was still open. The pain had faded into a dull, background ache I learned to live with. Until that night. Celine handed me the reservation sheet and pointed to a name. Party of 7. DiMartino. I stared at it. Thought it was a coincidence. Then I saw the names, Leo, Matteo, Mirella, Claudio. I didn't know if they knew it was my place. Maybe they just wanted to try a trendy restaurant. Maybe they saw the stars, the reviews, the photos, and came on a whim. Or maybe they knew. I didn't tell Celine what to do. I just said, seat them. I stayed in the kitchen most of the night, watching through the little window in the door. They looked smaller somehow. Older. Less sure of themselves. They devoured every course. I saw my mother tear up during the fennel consommé. My dad leaned in to smell the smoked lamb before taking a bite, like he was trying to understand it. Then dessert came. The signature one, fig and black walnut semifreddo, with a shatter-thin sugar crown. That's when I stepped out. And they saw me. My father stood up, like he was unsure if he should shake my hand or yell at me. "You made this?" he asked. I nodded. The table fell silent. Then my cousin Nia whispered, "Wait. That's him?" That's where things started getting real. The silence at their table was heavy. Not dramatic silence, not the kind you see in movies when someone drops a glass or makes a scene. This was something more suffocating. Like everyone was waiting for someone else to break it, but no one knew how. My mother's fork hovered over her plate, untouched since I walked out. My father's jaw clenched and unclenched like he was chewing on thoughts he didn't know how to swallow. I said nothing. What could I say? "Hi, remember me? How's the restaurant that you kicked me out of my own home for? Enjoying dessert?" Every possible sentence in my head felt petty or too polite. So I just stood there, waiting to see who they'd become in my absence. It was Matteo who spoke first. Of all people, Matteo. "You're the head chef?" I nodded. "And the owner." He glanced around the room like he was just seeing it for the first time. The minimalist decor, the wine shelves, the open kitchen behind me. Everything we'd built. I could see it all registering in his face. This wasn't some job I lucked into. I created this. I thought. He stopped, then gave a small, dry laugh. "Damn." That's all he said. Just damn. Like that one syllable somehow captured the weight of 5 years of silence, disownment, and disbelief. I turned to walk back to the kitchen. I wasn't trying to start a conversation. I had service to finish, tickets still printing, staff looking to me for cues. I'd done what I needed to do. I just wanted them to see. But then I heard my father's voice, low, uncertain. Wait. I paused. You really made all this? Still facing the kitchen, I answered over my shoulder. Every dish you've eaten. Every recipe on the menu. Every damn thing in this place. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear my mother start crying softly, not the guilt trip kind of crying she used to do when I disappointed her. This was quieter. Sadder. The kind of crying you do when you realize you've been wrong for a long time and there's no way to reverse it. Later that night, after closing, Celine found me sitting on a milk crate in the back alley, still in my apron, just staring at the steam coming out of the drain. You okay? She asked. I shrugged. They didn't even recognize me at first. Would you have wanted them to? I didn't have an answer for that. I still don't. The next morning, there was an envelope at the front desk with my name written in shaky cursive. Inside, a handwritten note. My mother's handwriting. We were wrong. About everything. Your father doesn't know how to say sorry, but he's proud. I see it. He wouldn't admit it, but I see it. I am too. I always was, I think, just afraid. You were right to leave. I hope we can talk soon. There was no number. No return address. Just that. I folded it and put it in my jacket pocket. Haven't taken it out since. In the days that followed, my brothers started circling back in strange, subtle ways. Matteo followed the restaurant's Instagram account. Leo emailed a vague, generic congratulations on your success that read more like a press release than anything personal. But still. It was something. Small cracks in the wall that had been up for years. The staff started buzzing too. Chef, was that really your family the other night? You serious? After what they did? Are they trying to get back in your life now that you're big? I didn't answer them, mostly because I didn't know myself. The truth is, I had imagined that moment for years. Not the fame. Not the stars. Not even the food. Just the look on their faces when they realized I did it, without them. That I wasn't some lost kid. That I didn't end up homeless or crawling back to ask for forgiveness. But I also imagined it would feel better. Like maybe I'd feel triumphant. Vindicated. Something cinematic. Instead, I felt hollow. Not broken. Not angry. Just hollow. Like I was finally holding the trophy I spent years chasing and didn't know what to do with it now that it was in my hands. A week later, Matteo showed up again. This time, alone. He came in during prep hours, dressed like he was headed to a funeral, black shirt, dark jeans, heavy expression. Celine saw him first and gave me a look. I'll handle him if you want, she offered. I shook my head. Let's see what he has to say. He didn't sit. Just stood by the service counter while I sliced beets. You're really not gonna say anything to me? I didn't look up. I think I said enough the night you packed my bags and told me I'd be homeless. He winced. I didn't mean it like that. You said it, though. I was scared. We all were. Dad was afraid of losing control. Mom was scared she'd lose you. Leo thought you were being selfish. And me. I was jealous. That caught me off guard. Jealous? I asked, finally looking at him. He nodded. You had the balls to leave. I didn't. That one hit. Because for all the resentment I carried, there was a part of me that always suspected Matteo was just doing what he thought he had to. I used to wonder what would have happened if we'd both left. If we'd tried to build something together instead of apart. I'm not here to ask for a job, he said. Or money. Or even forgiveness. I don't know. I wanted to see it again. To see you again. As you are now. I didn't say anything. Just handed him a slice of the beet I was working on. He bit it. Smoked? He asked. With rosemary and pink peppercorn. Damn, he whispered. That's all. Then he left. No grand apology. No hugs. Just a shared taste and a moment of truth between brothers who hadn't spoken in half a decade. It was almost surreal, the way Matteo left after that tiny exchange. Just left. No follow-up, no promise to stay in touch, no request for dinner or a drink. He came, he spoke, he tasted, and then he walked right back out onto the rainy Manhattan street like he'd just needed to scratch an itch in his soul. I didn't tell anyone he came by. Not Celine, not the staff, not even my sous chef who saw him hovering near the pass and asked me, "Isn't that the guy from the DiMartino table?" I just waved him off and said, "Yeah." Because I still didn't know what to do with any of it. It's one thing to be disowned, told you'll fail, that you'll come crawling back when the dream dies. But it's another thing entirely to succeed and be met with silence, or worse, slow regret that takes its sweet time to show up. For days after, I found myself more distracted than usual. During service, I missed a scallop that went out too seared. My sous caught it. "You good?" he asked. I brushed it off. I wasn't good. Celine picked up on it too. We'd always had a rhythm, a balance. If I was tense, she'd compensate. If she was tired, I'd shoulder the prep. But for the first time in years, we were off. Not fighting, just out of sync. Like I was trying to run a race underwater. Finally, one night after close, she cornered me near the back fridge. "You gonna tell me what's going on, or do I have to start guessing which brother or uncle is hiding in the wine cellar?" I sighed. Matteo came back. Alone. Few days ago. She blinked. "And you weren't going to tell me?" I didn't know how to explain it, I said. It wasn't anything. He came. He tasted something. He said he was jealous. Then he left. Celine leaned against the wall and folded her arms. Jealous? Yeah. We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the refrigeration unit filling the space. He said he didn't leave because he didn't have the courage, I added. Said I did. Sounds like something you needed to hear. Maybe, I said. Or maybe it's too late. Celine nodded slowly. So the question is, what do you want from them now? That was the thing. I didn't know. The restaurant was slammed. Press from a new food magazine article had reservations out 3 months. We were getting scouted by a culinary docuseries. And still, my mind wasn't fully there. Until a courier dropped off a thick white envelope at the front desk with no return address. Inside was a photo, one I hadn't seen in over a decade. It was a picture of me, Leo, and Matteo behind the prep station at DiMartino's, probably from when I was 15. We were wearing matching aprons that said "Future of the Family" in red embroidered letters. My arms were crossed. Matteo had a carrot behind his ear like a pencil. Leo looked exhausted. But we were smiling. Tucked behind it was another note. This one wasn't signed, but I knew the handwriting. My father's. I was too proud. You were too bold. And we were both too stubborn. You made something we never could. Doesn't mean what we had wasn't real. But I see now that it wasn't enough for you. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be. Come home if you want. Or don't. But I wanted you to have this. I stared at it for a long time. I don't even know how long. I skipped service that night. First time in years. I let my team handle everything. Celine didn't ask questions. Just gave me a nod and said, "Take the night." I walked through the city aimlessly. From the West Village up to the park, then down through Midtown. The photo felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. I must have pulled it out a dozen times. There was something strange about that picture. We looked happy. Not perfect, not sitcom family happy. But together. Before everything fell apart. Before expectations turned into ultimatums. Before "you'll be homeless without us" was the last thing I heard walking out that door. The next morning, I called my old friend Luca, someone I hadn't talked to since leaving Chicago. He used to work at DiMartino's too, back in the day. "Hey," I said. "Quick question." He laughed. "I heard about the restaurant. Congrats. Took you long enough to call me, Mr. Big Shot." "Thanks," I said. "Listen. What's going on back home? With my family?" He was quiet for a second. Then sighed. "Honestly? It's not the same. The second location failed. Leo barely talks to anyone. Mateo's been different since his divorce. And your dad? He's slower. Like the fight went out of him. Your mom still goes in every day, even though they barely get foot traffic now. Why? Habit, probably. Or guilt. I think losing you changed more than they expected. But no one ever admits that stuff out loud. That stuck with me. No one ever admits that stuff out loud. The envelope stayed in my apartment for weeks. Every time I passed my bookshelf, I'd catch sight of that photo and feel something tighten in my chest, not pain exactly. Just something close to it. Some strange, sharp nostalgia mixed with unfinished grief. Grief for a version of my family that existed once, briefly, before things got complicated. I didn't frame it. I didn't tuck it away either. I left it face down near my records. It felt right, somehow, like something I wasn't ready to look at but also wasn't ready to forget. One Thursday afternoon, a slow prep day between dinner services, Celine and I were eating leftover pasta at the Pass. We always did that, shared whatever was in the walk-in and pretended it was some fine dining experience when really we were just too tired to eat properly. She nudged her fork toward me. "Still thinking about going back?" I sighed. "I don't know. I think I'm afraid I'll walk into that restaurant and nothing will have changed." "And you're afraid everything has changed," she added, finishing the thought for me. That's what made her such a good partner, she could read me without needing the whole paragraph. "Exactly," I said. "What if they pretend like none of it happened? What if they act like it's all water under the bridge?" "Isn't that what people do?" she asked. "When they don't know how to apologize, they just act like it never happened." I shook my head. "But I remember every word." She didn't argue. She just nodded, because she knew better than to tell me to let it go. She knew I wasn't there yet. About a month later, I booked a ticket to Chicago. No warning. No calls ahead. No letters. I didn't even tell Celine until the night before. "Are you flying out tomorrow?" she asked while rolling out dough for the night's dessert. I nodded. "Just for a few days." "Are you staying with them?" I gave a dry laugh. "Hell no. Hotel. Somewhere with good coffee and no family photos." She just smiled and said, "Text me when you land." Landing in Chicago felt like time travel in the worst way. Everything looked familiar but duller, like someone had turned the saturation down on my childhood. I took an Uber past my old block. Our house was still there. Same chipped paint on the porch railings. Same cracked driveway. But the cars were different. No bikes on the lawn. No signs of life, really. Just a shell of what it used to be. I didn't stop. I told the driver to keep going. I wasn't here for nostalgia. I walked into DiMartino's around 3 p.m., slow hour. Mid-shift. That window when prep is winding down and dinner service hasn't kicked in yet. The place smelled the same. Tomatoes, garlic, something frying. It was both comforting and nauseating. The inside looked like it hadn't changed a bit. Same tablecloths. Same fake ivy over the windows. Same handwritten cash-only sign by the door, even though I knew damn well they'd had a card reader for years now. Behind the counter, Leo was counting receipts. He looked up when the bell chimed and froze. Froze. Didn't say anything at first. Just stared at me, blinking like I was someone he wasn't sure was real. Then he finally spoke. "Well, look what the cat dragged in." "Hi, Leo." He stepped out from behind the counter slowly, almost cautiously. "Are you here to pick up an order, or to deliver karma?" I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. Neither. I just needed to see the place. He looked around, then nodded. Not much to see these days. I could tell he meant it. The place looked tired. Not neglected, just worn out. Like it was surviving, not thriving. "How's business?" I asked, even though I already knew. He shrugged. "Slow. Has been for a while." Then, softer, "Too many people doing better versions of what we refuse to change." I didn't say anything to that. What could I say? He gestured to a booth near the back. "Sit for a minute?" I followed him back, sat down, let my fingers run over the table's plastic surface. There were still blade marks in it from when I used to carve little shapes when I was bored on shifts. "I didn't think I'd see you again," Leo said. "Thought maybe if you ever made it, you'd want to stay gone." "I did," I replied. "For a long time." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Dad hasn't been the same since you left." I looked at him. "He kicked me out." Leo nodded. "I know. He won't admit it, but I think he regrets it every day." We sat in silence. Just two grown men in a faded restaurant, chewing on decades of silence and stubbornness. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Do you want to see him?" I didn't answer right away. A few hours later, I found myself walking down a quiet residential street toward my parents' house. The sidewalk was uneven in the exact places I remembered. The air smelled like cut grass and fried dough. Someone was probably burning sausage on their backyard grill again. I stood on the curb across the street for a while. Watching. Just watching. The porch light was on, even though the sun hadn't gone down yet. That was always my mom's habit, just in case someone stops by. After maybe 15 minutes, I finally walked up the steps and knocked. Footsteps. Then the door opened. And there was my mother. She looked at me like she'd been expecting me, even though I knew that was impossible. No gasp. No dramatic hand to the chest. Just tears welling in her eyes as she whispered, "You came back." I didn't know what to say. All I could manage was, "Hi, Ma." She opened the door wider. "Come in. Please." I hesitated. I looked down at the threshold, like stepping over it meant something more permanent than I was ready for. But I stepped in anyway. The house smelled the same. Tomato paste and lemon cleaner. The couch was the same. The lamp that leaned slightly to the left. The wooden crucifix by the kitchen door. I could hear someone moving in the other room. Then I heard the familiar sound of my father's voice, not raised, not angry, just old. "Who is it, Mirella?" And my mother turned back and said, "It's your son." And then silence again. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to my father's footsteps as he shuffled slowly from the living room. When he appeared, he looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, though age had taken some of that too, but in presence. The man who used to tower in doorways, whose voice could fill a room with disapproval alone, now looked like someone who wasn't quite sure what world he was standing in. He stared at me for a long time. I waited. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said finally, "You look well." "I am." More silence. He looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't know how. And for once, I didn't feel the need to fill the gap for him. I just let it stretch. "I heard about your restaurant," he said. "2 Michelin stars." I nodded. "We're working on a third." He gave a tight smile, proud, maybe, but pride filtered through 1,000 layers of stubbornness. He gestured to the kitchen. You want coffee? I almost laughed at how normal that sounded. But I said yes. Because maybe normal was the only way we were ever going to do this. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where I once begged to go to New York, and he told me I'd never make it without the family. My mother poured us both coffee and sat with her hands in her lap. She looked like she didn't know if she was allowed to speak. Then my father said, "We were hard on you." I didn't reply. "We didn't understand what you were trying to do," he went on. "Didn't think it was real. Thought you were being disrespectful." "I wasn't," I said. "I just didn't want the life you were forcing on me." "I see that now." Another pause. I could see he was struggling to say what he needed to say. "I said some terrible things," he said. "You all did." He nodded, staring into his coffee. "I guess I thought. If we lost you, the whole thing would fall apart." And it did. But not in the way I expected. There it was. The quiet admission. Not a full apology, but enough of one for me to know the old man had changed, even if only a little. My mother reached over and put her hand on mine. "We're proud of you," she whispered. I believed her. I believed both of them. But I didn't say thank you. Not yet. 2 months later, I bought DiMartino's. Not out of sentimentality. Not to help them. Not even to reconnect. I bought it because I could, because after everything, it was still technically on the market, barely surviving, clinging to the last few months of operational life before bankruptcy took it. The day the sale went through, Matteo texted me. "Are you sure about this?" And I replied, simply, "Very." I closed the restaurant for renovation within the week. I paid my parents the agreed amount, more than fair, generous even. I gave them enough to retire and made sure the deal came with lifetime health insurance, just because I could. Then I gutted the place. The checkered tablecloths? Gone. The outdated menu? Scrapped. The cramped kitchen and burned-out fryers? Replaced with an open kitchen, wood-fired hearth, and custom prep stations. I flew Celine out from New York and gave her a tour. "What's the plan?" she asked. I handed her the new concept booklet. On the front, Figlio. "It means son," I said. She smiled, catching the full weight of that word. "Tell me we're not doing veal parm." I grinned. Not even close. The grand reopening of Figlio happened 6 months later. We didn't advertise much. We didn't need to. Word of mouth from the New York crowd had already reached Chicago. Food writers flew in. Influencers, critics, former classmates, people who once mocked me for leaving. And my family. They were invited, formally, but not with fanfare. Just an envelope delivered by hand. I saw them come in, my father in a fitted navy suit, standing straighter than he had in years. My mother wore a soft green scarf I remembered from my childhood. Matteo came with his new partner. Leo showed up alone. They were seated at the chef's table. No introductions needed. The server handed them the tasting menu. 8 courses. Each one, intentionally, a twist on something they used to cook, but reimagined. Evolved. My way. Crispy gnocchi with black garlic foam. Lamb agnolotti with brown butter and smoked mint. Burnt citrus sorbet with Prosecco pearls. And the final course, roasted fig gelato with crushed amaretti and aged balsamic reduction. My signature dessert. I came out, just like I had in New York, wearing my clean whites and apron. The room went still as I approached their table. They were all watching me. This time, I didn't wait for them to speak. I looked my father in the eye and said, calmly, "Welcome to my restaurant." He stood. Then, slowly, he clapped. The others followed. Not the over-the-top kind of applause. Just something soft. Measured. Honest. And that was enough. It wasn't revenge the way I thought it would be, years ago when I was hungry and bitter and sleeping on a friend's floor in a basement apartment in Brooklyn. This wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about showing them who I became because they let me go. They thought they were cutting me off, that they were casting me out. But what they really did was set me free.